Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspective podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host, and today we've got a conversation with a very special guest, Imogen Wethered. Now, Imogen, I'm going to talk about why I think our conversation is so special today, and then a little bit about your background. But we're going to talk about trust. And trust in the B2B world is something that is not looked upon, not planned for, not designed in the way that it should in today's world. And even big Gartner, Forrester came out with a prediction for this year, which was that trust is the currency to get into and close deals. They went on to say that we have brand building programs, we have trust brand building programs, we have programs for building demand generation, but we don't have any programs for building brand. And to accentuate, this is a stat that everyone is surprised by, but it comes out every year. The Trust Barometer by Edelman, 32,000 respondents worldwide said that business leaders like us, 68% there thought that we're being intentionally misleading. That's the environment, right? And so we're going to talk about trust in a way that you've broken it down in your company. And this is your second SaaS company. You had a company first that you started at age 23. You were awarded an honoree for Forbes 30 Under 30. You sold it to a NASDAQ listed company. You are now the CEO of EnableAll, which has an incredible story. So I would like to turn it over to you before we dig into trust, which I call the trust epidemic, and then how you build transparency, how you build fairness into your brain.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, so my name's Imogen, and before EnableAll, I started a company age 23 where I went to a hackathon, which is an event where you kind of challenge with coding an idea over a weekend. And that was where I met a developer. I was there as an ideas kind of marketing type person, and I met my co-founder of the business there, and we came up with the idea to solve queuing in theme parks. And after that, we got backing from Telefonica, which is one of the big telco providers in Europe, through their business accelerator or kind of incubator space. And from there, we managed to get a trial with O2, the telecoms retailer. And because we were able to work with an enterprise brand so early on, it helped us to go and approach more enterprise brands. Meanwhile, though, those enterprise brands were quite slow. We were also kind of doing SMB deals as well in order to kind of keep paying the bills where we could, as well as fundraisers and all of the stuff that goes around it. Building the business over 10 years, we nearly died a number of times, but actually COVID was quite a good thing for our company. And queue management and this idea of kind of managing customers coming into a store and adding them to some kind of formal waiting list became more of a thing in Europe and even in the US, where I understand like managing customers in a line is different. So after COVID, we had some offers to buy the business, and we sold to a NASDAQ listed company named Variant Systems.
Tell me a little bit, if you can, about what you learned about building trust and the importance of it during that whole time. And now how you're applying it to your current company and what your current company is.
So the main thing, and I'll talk a bit more about the current company as I kind of build the story, but the main thing that we learned with Kidini was, and this is kind of going into an example of customers in a store, but I think it relates quite heavily to B2B context and what we're seeing now. But essentially, what we were doing is previously to us, businesses were managing customers coming into a store and writing their names down on a clipboard and a pen. And customers would be constantly asking the colleagues at the front of the store, how long until I get served? How long until I get served? What we did was replace that clipboard with a tablet device that enabled them to add the customers into a line. We would calculate the wait time, and they would even be able to text that to the customer. As a result, they saw 70% reduction in the number of customers walking out because they couldn't be bothered to wait. They saw significantly improved NPS scores, and they also saw a lot higher conversion of those customers as well. And the main learning from that, and this is something that the team members that use the software always said to us, is people trusted the system more than they trusted people. So they were happier. They kind of felt like their position in the line was better saved when it was via a system rather than a person. But it's the person assisted, it's kind of the machine assisted by a colleague, because when people were just asked to enter their details into a kiosk, they trusted that less than they did when it was the person aided by the machine. And then the other big part of that was giving customers really, really transparent information and access to services. It's kind of taking that one step further. As well as, I think the reason it builds trust is that it's showing people you respect them and you respect their time and you value them as a person. And that always feels like it's a service that's been built by a human for a human. And I think in a world where we're seeing more and more, for example, customer service bots, etc., you always wonder as a person when you're entering this process, and if you've got quite a nuanced query, you're wondering, when is this actually going to get escalated to a person? So just that kind of transparency and showing that this is a human that has designed this process and that you will, when you need to, there is a human managing it that you can be escalated to. So we kind of always want to build that into the processes that we have, that this is tech powered by humans. And another interesting learning from that was that geography and culture is also very key, and that can vary by country. So our company doing the queue management software was a challenge because in the UK and the US, we are not akin to using these machines to manage our place in a line. Whereas anywhere you go in Europe, you would take a ticket and you'd stand and wait and look at the screen and you would kind of be managed in a queue. And you might see that a little bit in banking in the UK and the US, but it was not commonplace in retail. So we found that our software needed to differ slightly based on where we were. And the same goes in kind of in B2B context, like customers abroad just behave and think about things differently. So understanding that is really important, and making sure you can adapt your ways of doing things to the different cultures is important.
So, two big things that I'm taking away, and tell me if I'm taking away something right here, is that you really changed the customer experience from the moment that they walked into that retail establishment. And there was a big study that was done by McKinsey in 2023. They looked at over 400 highly profitable B2C and B2B businesses, and they determined CX, customer experience, was the number one differentiator. And the second takeaway is that you're embracing the technology, but not ignoring the human component to it. It's like you're fusing the two together, where, like a lot of AI assisted chatbots, from the customer's perspective, it seems like the entire goal is to avoid ever having to deal with a human, right? Humans cost money. Humans are overhead. Humans are messy. They need to be trained, right? They expect to have a lot of breaks and everything. So, two things: the focus on CX, is that part of your design? And then talk a little bit more about creating that experience that is trusted by the bonding of technology and the human.
So I always see it as that the machines are triage. Like when you go to A&E, you will wait to be seen, and you will go to the triage nurse first, who will kind of write down and kind of understand why you're there. And when your issue is big enough, you go to the doctor. And I see the humans as the doctors and the machines as kind of doing the triage within the kind of customer support angle.
So, how does this reduce customer stress, buyer stress? It feels like you're putting more control into their hands. How is this enabling, like, specifically, what are the elements that you're targeting in this improved experience that they would replay back to you and say, this is why we thought it was better?
Yeah, so control is everything to reducing stress, in terms of people want to feel like they are in control of the experience that they are going to have. And in order to give customers control, you need to give them transparency and you need to give them information to make decisions on, and also visibility. So, online and at a basic sense, like one of the things that makes people feel as on control in like an online sign up journey, for example, is having that breadcrumb of shows them where someone is in the process. It's kind of similar concept, as well as just giving people optionality to be able to navigate a service the way that they need to. And this is where I might just bring in EnableAll, if I may, is we are a accessibility software company that helps Shopify retailers to start, but in general, kind of we're expanding across e-commerce to enable their sites to become more accessible for people with disabilities. And so there's 1 in 4 customers who need some kind of accessibility support. Our technology can be used on the back end. It will code fix a lot of the issues that customers with a screen reader, which is about 5% of people, as well as 10% of people who need keyboard only navigation. And it will fix a lot of the barriers that they come across on a site on a day-to-day basis. As well as on the front end, it gives customers this toolbar that they can click on any page of a site and be able to customize the site to their needs. That can be things like changing the font size and style, as well as adjusting the colors, which is one of our biggest used features. If they have epilepsy, for example, they can stop animations. If they have learning difficulties, they can click on text and have it simplified. They can click on text and even have it translated into sign language. So all of this gives the customer kind of maximum optionality and therefore maximum control of how they want to navigate a site. And so within a B2B realm, we're trying to kind of deliver that type of service to our clients as well through a number of different means through this concept of choice.
In our previous conversation, you had talked about getting and allowing the customers to get involved, to trial, to shape solutions, right? Like we all know that's a basic 101. Right? We test, we put things in front of customers and test. How does your methodology or your point of view change from just our basic notions of, yes, we must test what we roll out?
First of all, we do a lot of testing with our user base. So, customers that have disabilities and can give us kind of really raw, honest feedback to help us shape the product, as well as assistive testing companies, but also then enabling our clients to trial it. So, obviously, kind of we've extended our trial period and we do everything we can to accept feedback in the product. At the moment, it's kind of a click to give feedback in a form. But actually, what we want to build is those kind of more smiley face options that enable people to faster give feedback and prompt it faster. And then within the B2B realm, this EnableAll is kind of more a PLG led product. Within Qdini, my previous business, we were enterprise. So our account managers and our customer success managers were key, and we were offering trials to businesses to prove the results. And in both companies, what we'll do with a company during their trial is work with them to show what the return on investment is and really try and get them to get the benchmark stats before we start so we can prove where things have changed. At an enterprise level, I'd just say we didn't offer free trials. We started out offering free trials, and that actually we found that we didn't get enough high level, like senior level stakeholder engagement. So over time, we actually thought, do you know what, people value what they pay for more. So we started charging for the trials. But at the company, we were really solution designing and working with clients to understand what was the future of our product. We'd mock things up on screen and get feedback. And even EnableAll, like working with our first clients, we will kind of mock up new capabilities that we're thinking of doing and get feedback from the shoppers who are going to use them, as well as the businesses who want it on their site.
I mean, I love the hands-on approach of proving the ROI. On the trust front, 74% of business to business buyers, they don't believe the customer evidence that we present to them. So how we package up and, say, hey, this is what we do for our customers. We can do it for you. And one of the things that I just heard is that you really roll up your sleeves and you prove it on their business. Like during that trial, you're working with them. So they're not having to just blindly trust. They're seeing it working inside of their business. That's not a typical SaaS model. To say right now, I'm a two-time SaaS founder myself. So to all the SaaS companies out there, what is your advice on that? That seems labor intensive, time intensive to do, but is it the short-term resource allocation that's the long-term reward? Like, why have you gone to such a model where you're going to roll up your sleeves and work with them to prove ROI during that trial?
Because those ROI stats become the drum message that you beat in every conversation, every piece of content that you have. So it's just really key. So the key ways of doing it for us have always been getting the client to try and measure their benchmarks before, which is actually the hardest part because a lot of the clients don't know or they don't know what influences conversion, etc. So trying to do that as well as what can we do in our tool to help them track that and our data capabilities, as well as kind of building out like as simple as possible kind of ROI spreadsheet model that's kind of this is what it was before. And if we change it to this is kind of what you're getting in terms of return. And then when we're building case studies, where possible, getting the client to say what their results have been on video, because that is always, like you're saying, people are querying stats. Anyone can put a stat on a page, but if you've got that video, it really backs that up.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to hear directly from your peers in the industry and not the translation that came through it. So you take trust building to all kinds of levels, product development, shaping the product, trials, things like we just talked about. You believe in pricing as a huge trust builder. Tell us a little bit about that philosophy.
So, when it comes to pricing, some of the key things that we do, first of all, I think a lot of companies kind of bury something in their terms and conditions, which are written by a lawyer, and no one reads that. But it's obviously super essential. And those are the things you can get bad reviews on when people have kind of signed up to something that they didn't realize that's the way it was. So, what we do at EnableAll is we have a key pricing terms page which just kind of surfaces all the high level, kind of most important things that someone needs to know when they're signing up. So, a lot of companies in our space will charge based on monthly web sessions, which, if you're a retailer, your monthly web sessions in December and November is going to be much, much higher than it is in kind of March and April. What we do is we take their average 12 months and just kind of build fairness into that. So they're less likely to have their price plan change 1 month because last month it was super high and then it takes them 2 or 3 months to get that rate down so they can downgrade again. So in fact, we just want to keep them on the price plan that is most realistic to them, and that ensures happier customers and good reviews for our business. And also, very importantly, is giving people visibility over their data and dashboards. And yes, it can be a risk. At Chiellini, it was a risk that people would see that certain stores, because they were rolling it out in stores, that certain people weren't using the software. But I'd rather they have that visibility, can make the call themselves as a business. And our company is always going to build more products to these customers. So we should be able to win them on other products, even if that particular product wasn't right for that particular store.
I think that's a really big takeaway is that hiding the information that could hurts your reputation and your trust, right? Giving that information provides transparency and builds trust. And, we back to that LinkedIn Edelman trust barometer when 68% of people are not trusting us and think we're being intentionally misleading. The more transparency that we can provide, the better. And going back to getting customer testimonials on video, the more that we can hear directly from the people who are benefiting from your product, the better. These are the kinds of things, everything you're laying out here is what I think Forrester would say, you've got to have a trust building plan, right? And that plan has to be pervasive throughout what you're doing. So what else? What else do you do to build trust into your go-to-market strategy?
Just on the pricing one, actually, one point I didn't add was that we're honest about where something has a third party cost to us. So, for example, people might query, why is this cost so high? And they'll try and negotiate that. But if we're just honest about the fact that, okay, we have a third party cost here and we have to protect a certain level of margin, often that query just disappears, which is really helpful, but having that kind of honesty. So, where else we're trying to build honesty into our brand is I'm going to give an outside example that's kind of outside B2B and outside how we do things that I think is interesting. So I was looking recently at getting laser eye surgery, which, as you can see, I chickened out of. So one of the issues was that where claims feel hyped, people don't trust them. So within a lot of the laser eye clinics, and this was kind of a few documentaries and stuff I watched, but a lot of it will say like 8 minutes and you'll walk out and you'll never need glasses again, exclamation mark, with the exclamation marks actually in the content. And maybe exclamation marks are good in some spaces or with some tone of voice, but within like particularly healthcare and where something, this is surgery we're talking about, and an exclamation mark didn't feel credible to me. I found that they were then, when you go through the consultations, I got to a certain level and went through the consultation, then they read out all the risks and you're like, oh, ow, actually, like you don't really mention a lot of these in your content. So I think toning down hype and being honest and including caveats, even if those caveats are going to put some people off, it's better to be honest so that people kind of go in and they see that you are credible and reputable in the way that you are doing things. And so that was one of the challenges that I had with that process. And then within our industry, so our software EnableAll is helping companies comply with something, or better comply with something called the WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which are these kind of 80 plus guidelines which explain how companies should make their websites more accessible. And that helps them comply better with the Americans with Disabilities Act in the US and the European Accessibility Act in Europe and other global legislation. So companies in our industry will often state in their content that they can make companies fully compliant, or they will heavily imply it. So within our content, I will always use the word better comply or improve adherence or kind of boost alignment, but never say comply or fully comply, which is one of the main things you also have to look out on when you're using AIs to refine your marketing content, because it will often, you'll put something in to be like, please, can you refine my copy here, check for spelling, and it will just like take out some of these words. You're like, no, don't take that out. That's super important because that is making sure people aren't misled. When we have this strategy, we also have kind of a document that helps brands understand what we can fix on the WCAG guidelines and what we can't fix. And it's important to us as a brand, it's important to us to be honest. I worry about it, obviously, because prospects might see our competitors and think, that system says it makes you fully compliant and that system doesn't. And that's always a worry. But I'd rather have that honesty than that being a repercussion later, or than any business ever thinking that we can do something that we don't, because no automated tool can make a company fully WCAG compliant. It's too much of a great challenge. And my kind of concept in that is that perfection isn't trustworthy. For example, particularly with AI, like people would prefer to see the odd spelling mistake here and there because then you know a human has written it. So being honest about imperfection is better at building trust than trying to look perfect.
So you took it to another level in our previous conversation. You said brands build trust. And we kind of all know that. In school, if you were in marketing, you learned, that brands are trust marks, right? But you equated it to not only are brands a signal of trust, but it has to have people behind the products, people behind the brand, the technology. Explain that connection and why that's not an obvious statement, why that's something that you build into the design of your go-to-market.
So people behind the product is key to showing that you are a real company. I mean, particularly now when we're working in a backdrop of where there's examples of fake founder videos or people losing thousands or even millions because they've sent money to people because they watched like a fake video. So we're actually in an age where you can't always believe your eyes. So you kind of have to layer in these things that show that you are a person oriented business. Some of the key things that we do are office location. So whenever I'm trying to look at a company and whether it's credible, I will always try and find where is their office. And a lot of companies don't have it on their site. So they might, and sometimes you'll look through the T's and C's hoping to find something, but even that can be a challenge. So putting your office location and even a phone number or an emails that enable people to get in touch with you is really key. If you're sending automated emails, always kind of having the ability to reply to those, to actually hear from a person or schedule a call, as well as kind of having in your website content, presentations, videos, etc., showing your people behind the company is really key, as well as obviously like founder presence in marketing and also your customers and who they are as people as well is something that we'll always try to do.
So I have one last question for you, and it's the most important because we have really covered a lot of territory here. It's been fantastic. But our poor human brains, we only can take in and retain about 2 or 3 things at a time. If there was one really important thing that the CEOs, CMOs, CROs, CGOs, chief customer officers that are learning from your discussion today, if there was one thing that you wanted to make sure they took away, what would that be?
It relates to what you said at the start, but essentially we are in an authenticity economy as opposed to an awareness economy where people are just trying to get attention from people. Now we're trying to get their trust. And to do that, we need to be authentic. And when we were researching this topic, we came across this concept of the doubt tax, which is basically you have to make your content, you have to kind of work against the fact that people are more likely to see you with doubt. But the idea of it being an authenticity economy means we should be treating that as a growth lever, not just a burden that we need to work against. So how do we make that part of our brand, part of our ethos, and part of why customers choose us as a company?
So one extension to that, because I love the soundbite you put together there, in the world of B2B, there's all kinds of studies that show that the first day that somebody decides, a buyer decides, or a company decides, I need this kind of a solution, I need to look for companies that provide that. Day one, they put 4 out of 5 in general on their list, and 95% of the time they buy from one of those. So this is before they've talked to you, before you've had that conversation. So I was talking with another gentleman, just was on the show, a B2B CRO, and he said, Steve, it's most important that they know who we are and they trust us before they know what we do.
Yeah.
I'd just love to have you react to that comment.
Definitely. I think, and that's kind of one of the concepts, which is that a lot of interest in products comes from advocacy. And advocacy, someone will tell you who a brand is, and you'll have that trust element before you actually really even know what the product is. And that's why I see that as one of the key best marketing channels that you can have.
Yeah. Another B2B CRO, multiple time B2B CRO, he said, we've got to be 15 months out of any RFP. We got to be ahead of them even deciding that they need a solution like one that we have, right? So what I'm taking away from this whole conversation is that trust is something that you never stop thinking about. You build it into your awareness programs, right? Just to be known and trusted all the way through your product development, your customer service, how you design experience, how you design your pricing models, right? There's never a time where this isn't first and foremost in importance for building and growing your company. Is that a good takeaway?
Definitely a good takeaway. And so I was thinking of one example, which is that I was in Whole Foods the other day, and like even having crisp visuals and logos and nice packaging or a nice website is key because I was in Whole Foods the other day and I was looking at two vitamins. And one of them, the logo just didn't look crisp. The packaging looked like it had just been printed a bit more rough and ready than the other one. And I chose the one with the crisper logo, the better packaging. The pricing at that point did not even matter to me. I didn't even look at the price. I chose it because I trusted that one more because it looked like it had come from a more credible company.
We do judge a book by its cover, don't
Yes.
we? I just want to say that, the mission of this podcast is to bring different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences from all over the C-suite together so that we can all learn.
Mhm.
And if we do that, then that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And you were an amazing part of that rising tide today. I just wanted to say thank you for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve. It's been wonderful to chat to you.